Autobiography of a Yogi. By Paramahansa Yogananda. Chapter 19-20. My master, in Calcutta, appears in Serampore. I am often beset by atheistic doubts. Yet a torturing surmise sometimes haunts me: may not untapped soul possibilities exist? Is man not missing his real destiny if he fails to explore them? These remarks of Dijan Babu, my roommate at the Panthai boarding house, were called forth by my invitation that he meet my guru. Sri Yukteswarji will initiate you into Kriya Yoga, I replied. It calms the dualistic turmoil by a divine inner certainty. That evening Dijan accompanied me to the hermitage. In Master's presence my friend received such spiritual peace that he was soon a constant visitor. The trivial preoccupations of daily life are not enough for man, wisdom too is a native hunger. In Sri Yukteswar's words, Dijan found an incentive to those attempts, first painful, then effortlessly liberating, to locate a realier self within his bosom than the humiliating ego of a temporary birth, seldom ample enough for the spirit. As Dijan and I were both pursuing the AB course at Serampore College, we got into the habit of walking together to the ashram as soon as classes were over. We would often see Sri Yukteswar standing on his second-floor balcony, welcoming our approach with a smile. One afternoon Kanai, a young hermitage resident, met Dijan and me at the door with disappointing news. Master is not here, he was summoned to Calcutta by an urgent note. The following day I received a postcard from my guru. I shall leave Calcutta Wednesday morning, he had written. You and Dijan meet the 9 o'clock train at Serampore station. About 8:30 on Wednesday morning, a telepathic message from Sri Yukteswar flashed insistently to my mind: I am delayed, don't meet the 9 o'clock train. I conveyed the latest instructions to Dijan, who was already dressed for departure. You and your intuition. My friend's voice was edged in scorn. I prefer to trust Master's written word. I shrugged my shoulders and seated myself with quiet finality. Muttering angrily, Dijan made for the door and closed it noisily behind him. As the room was rather dark, I moved nearer to the window overlooking the street. The scant sunlight suddenly increased to an intense brilliancy in which the iron-barred window completely vanished. Against this dazzling background appeared the clearly materialized figure of Sri Yukteswar. Bewildered to the point of shock, I rose from my chair and knelt before him. With my customary gesture of respectful greeting at my guru's feet, I touched his shoes. These were a pair familiar to me, of orange-dyed canvas, soled with rope. His ochre swami cloth brushed against me. I distinctly felt not only the texture of his robe, but also the gritty surface of the shoes, and the pressure of his toes within them. Too much astounded to utter a word, I stood up and gazed at him questioningly. I was pleased that you got my telepathic message. Master's voice was calm, entirely normal. I have now finished my business in Calcutta, and shall arrive in Serampore by the 10 o'clock train. As I still stared mutely, Sri Yukteswar went on, this is not an apparition, but my flesh and blood form. I have been divinely commanded to give you this experience, rare to achieve on earth. Meet me at the station, you and Dijan will see me coming toward you, dressed as I am now. I shall be preceded by a fellow passenger, a little boy carrying a silver jug. My guru placed both hands on my head, with a murmured blessing. As he concluded with the words, "Tuba-Asi," I heard a peculiar rumbling sound. His body began to melt gradually within the piercing light. First his feet and legs vanished, then his torso and head, like a scroll being rolled up. To the very last, I could feel his fingers resting lightly on my hair. The effulgence faded. Nothing remained before me but the barred window and a pale stream of sunlight. I remained in a half stupor of confusion, questioning whether I had not been the victim of a hallucination. A crestfallen Daijan soon entered the room. Master was not on the 9 o'clock train, nor even the 9:30. My friend made his announcement with a slightly apologetic air. Come then, I know he will arrive at 10 o'clock. I took Daijan's hand and rushed him forcibly along with me, heedless of his protests. In about 10 minutes we entered the station, where the train was already puffing to a halt. The whole train is filled with the light of Master's aura. He is there! I exclaimed joyfully. You dream so? Daijan laughed mockingly. Let us wait here. I told my friend details of the way in which our guru would approach us. As I finished my description, Sri Yukteswar came into view, wearing the same clothes I had seen a short time earlier. He walked slowly in the wake of a small lad bearing a silver jug. For a moment a wave of cold fear passed through me, at the unprecedented strangeness of my experience. I felt the materialistic, 20th century world slipping from me. Was I back in the ancient days when Jesus appeared before Peter on the sea? As Sri Yukteswar, a modern yogi Christ, reached the spot where Daijan and I were speechlessly rooted, Master smiled at my friend and remarked, I sent you a message too, but you were unable to grasp it? Daijan was silent, but glared at me suspiciously. After we had escorted our guru to his hermitage, my friend and I proceeded towards Serampuri College. Daijan halted in the street, indignation streaming from his every pore. So, Master sent me a message. Yet you concealed it? I demand an explanation. Can I help it if your mental mirror oscillates with such restlessness that you cannot register our guru's instructions? I retorted. The anger vanished from Daijan's face. I see what you mean, he said ruefully. But please explain how you could know about the child with the jug. By the time I had finished the story of Master's phenomenal appearance at the boarding house that morning, my friend and I had reached Serampuri College. The account I have just heard of our guru's powers, Daijan said, makes me feel that any university in the world is only a kindergarten. Autobiography of a Yogi. By Paramahansa Yogananda. Chapter 20. We do not visit Kashmir. Father, I want to invite Master and 4 friends to accompany me to the Himalayan foothills during my summer vacation. May I have 6 train passes to Kashmir and enough money to cover our travel expenses? As I had expected, Father laughed heartily. This is the 3rd time you have given me the same cock and bull story. Didn't you make a similar request last summer, and the year before that? At the last moment, Sri Yukteswarji refuses to go. It is true, Father, I don't know why my guru will not give me his definite word about Kashmir. But if I tell him that I have already secured the passes from you, somehow I think that this time he will consent to make the journey. Father was unconvinced at the moment, but the following day, after some good-humored jibes, he handed me 6 passes and a roll of 10-rupee bills. I hardly think your theoretical trip needs such practical props, he remarked, but here they are. That afternoon I exhibited my booty to Sri Yukteswar. Though he smiled at my enthusiasm, his words were non-committal, I would like to go, we shall see. He made no comment when I asked his little hermitage disciple, Kanai, to accompany us. I also invited 3 other friends Rajendra Nath Mitra, Jodan Addi, and 1 other boy. Our date of departure was set for the following Monday. On Saturday and Sunday I stayed in Calcutta, where marriage rites for a cousin were being celebrated at my family home. I arrived in Serampuri with my luggage early Monday morning. Rajendra met me at the hermitage door. Master is out, walking. He has refused to go. I was equally grieved and obdurate. I will not give father a third chance to ridicule my chimerical plans for Kashmir. Come, the rest of us will go anyhow. Rajendra agreed. I left the ashram to find a servant. Kanai, I knew, would not take the trip without master, and someone was needed to look after the luggage. I bethought myself of Bihari, previously a servant in my family home, who was now employed by a Serampuri schoolmaster. As I walked along briskly, I met my guru in front of the Christian church near Serampuri courthouse. Where are you going? Sri Yukteswar's face was unsmiling. Sir, I hear that you and Kanai will not take the trip we have been planning. I am seeking Bihari. You will recall that last year he was so anxious to see Kashmir that he even offered to serve without pay. I remember. Nevertheless, I don't think Bihari will be willing to go. I was exasperated. He is just eagerly waiting for this opportunity. My guru silently resumed his walk. I soon reached the schoolmaster's house. Bihari, in the courtyard, greeted me with a friendly warmth that abruptly vanished as soon as I mentioned Kashmir. With a murmured word of apology, the servant left me and entered his employer's house. I waited half an hour, nervously assuring myself that Bihari's delay was being caused by preparations for his trip. Finally I knocked at the front door. Bihari left by the back stairs about 30 minutes ago, a man informed me. A slight smile hovered about his lips. I departed sadly, wondering whether my invitation had been too coercive or whether master's unseen influence were at work. Passing the Christian church, again I saw my guru walking slowly toward me. Without waiting to hear my report, he exclaimed. So Bihari would not go. Now, what are your plans? I felt like a recalcitrant child who is determined to defy his masterful father. Sir, I am going to ask my uncle to lend me his servant, Lalthari. See your uncle if you want to, Sri Yukteswar replied with a chuckle. But I hardly think you will enjoy the visit. Apprehensive but rebellious, I left my guru and entered Serampuri courthouse. My paternal uncle, Sarada Ghosh, a government attorney, welcomed me affectionately. I am leaving today with some friends for Kashmir, I told him. For years I have been looking forward to this Himalayan trip. I am happy for you, Mukunda. Is there anything I can do to make your journey more comfortable? These kind words gave me a lift of encouragement. Dear uncle, I said, could you possibly spare me your servant, Lalthari? My simple request had the effect of an earthquake. Uncle jumped so violently that his chair overturned, the papers on the desk flew in every direction, and his pipe, a long, coconut-stemmed hubble-bubble, fell to the floor with a great clatter. You selfish young man, he shouted, quivering with wrath, what a preposterous idea! Who will look after me, if you take my servant on one of your pleasure jaunts? I concealed my surprise, reflecting that my amiable uncle's sudden change of front was only one more enigma in a day fully devoted to incomprehensibility. My retreat from the courthouse office was more alacritous than dignified. I returned to the hermitage, where my friends were expectantly gathered. Conviction was growing on me that some sufficient if exceedingly recondite motive was behind master's attitude. Remorse seized me that I had been trying to thwart my guru's will. Mukunda, wouldn't you like to stay a while longer with me? Sri Yukteswar inquired. Rajendra and the others can go ahead now, and wait for you at Calcutta. There will be plenty of time to catch the last evening train leaving Calcutta for Kashmir. Sir, I don't care to go without you, I said mournfully. My friends paid not the slightest attention to my remark. They summoned a hackney carriage and departed with all the luggage. Kanai and I sat quietly at our guru's feet. After a half hour of complete silence, Master rose and walked toward the second floor dining patio. Can I, please serve Mukunda's food? His train leaves soon. Getting up from my blanket seat, I staggered suddenly with nausea and a ghastly churning sensation in my stomach. The stabbing pain was so intense that I felt I had been abruptly hurled into some violent hell. Groping blindly toward my guru, I collapsed before him, attacked by all symptoms of the dread Asiatic cholera. Sri Yukteswar and Kanai carried me to the sitting room. Racked with agony, I cried, Master, I surrender my life to you, for I believed it was indeed fast ebbing from the shores of my body. Sri Yukteswar put my head on his lap, stroking my forehead with angelic tenderness. You see now what would have happened if you were at the station with your friends, he said. I had to look after you in this strange way, because you chose to doubt my judgment about taking the trip at this particular time. I understood at last. Inasmuch as great masters seldom see fit to display their powers openly, a casual observer of the day's events would have imagined that their sequence was quite natural. My guru's intervention had been too subtle to be suspected. He had worked his will through Bihari and my uncle Sarada and Rajendra and the others in such an inconspicuous manner that probably everyone but myself thought the situations had been logically normal. As Sri Yukteswar never failed to observe his social obligations, he instructed Kanai to go for a specialist, and to notify my uncle. Master, I protested, only you can heal me. I am too far gone for any doctor. Child, you are protected by the divine mercy. Don't worry about the doctor, he will not find you in this state. You are already healed. With my guru's words, the excruciating suffering left me. I sat up feebly. A doctor soon arrived and examined me carefully. You appear to have passed through the worst, he said. I will take some specimens with me for laboratory tests. The following morning the physician arrived hurriedly. I was sitting up, in good spirits. Well, here you are, smiling and chatting as though you had had no close call with death. He patted my hand gently. I hardly expected to find you alive, after I had discovered from the specimens that your disease was Asiatic cholera. You are fortunate, young man, to have a guru with divine healing powers. I am convinced of it. I agreed wholeheartedly. As the doctor was preparing to leave, Rajendra and Adi appeared at the door. The resentment in their faces changed into sympathy as they glanced at the physician and then at my somewhat wan countenance. We were angry when you didn't turn up as agreed at the Calcutta train. You have been sick. Yes. I could not help laughing as my friends placed the luggage in the same corner it had occupied yesterday. I quoted, there was a ship that went to Spain, when it arrived, it came back again. Master entered the room. I permitted myself a convalescent's liberty, and captured his hand lovingly. Guruji, I said, from my 12th year on, I have made many unsuccessful attempts to reach the Himalayas. I am finally convinced that without your blessings the goddess Parvati will not receive me.